Hello and welcome to Dystopian Review, the place where we dream of nightmare worlds. I'm your host, Jesse Pohlman, and with the release of Shadowrun Returns Dragonfall, I thought I'd talk just a little bit about the series. I tried to do a review of Shadowrun as sort of a test of the whole Dystopian Review video series. And one of the first things I did was break out my copy of the 3rd edition Shadowrun book. Because, honestly, 3rd edition is what I'm most familiar with. I got into Shadowrun when I was in college. I was a freshman, I met up with some fellow nerds, and the next thing you know, we were doing role-playing games. And instead of Dungeons & Dragons, or Vampire the Masquerade, which I think is worth talking about in a dystopian sense as well, we decided to do Shadowrun. And I think it's definitely a great dystopian role-playing game. It draws a lot of inspiration from William Gibson, especially Neuromancer and Johnny Mnemonic, but it also draws a lot of fantasy elements by having dwarves and orcs as characters that you play as. There's magic, and dragons. It really can't get any better. Right now, I think I'm going to let past me do some talking, just because present me has to, get to work at a, day job. But hopefully you'll enjoy, and if not, well, you know what? Too bad. Tell you a little about the world to start you off. Let's just remember that it was written back, I believe, in the 80s. And it envisioned a future where the Mayan doomsday apocalypse came true in the sense that magic returns and dragons awake from their slumber, and you have a nightmare on your hands politically. And then as the years go by, you get a very cyberpunk-esque setting with mega corporations ruling the world. Wait a minute, are we sure this isn't nonfiction? And we get cybernetic enhancements, we get William Gibson-esque plug your head into the computer. It's an awesome setting for any sort of story. But as it so happens, Shadowrun is a role-playing game. No, we're not talking about that Xbox first-person shooter thing they called Shadowrun. We're talking today, in particular, about Shadowrun Returns, a game conceived of by Harebrained Schemes, which, by the way, I might add, a great name for a company. So anyway, Shadowrun Returns is very similar to another little game called Neverwinter Nights, in that it takes pen and paper tabletop game, breaks it down into more computer friendly stylings, and it allows for a great deal of customization. The game is released with something called a module. Modules are, there's going to be hundreds of them eventually, I'm sure, but they're each little campaigns created by basically whoever wanted to create them. The first one they released is called Dead Man's Switch, and I don't want to give too many spoilers, although I'm sure you can just look up a Let's Play. But Dead Man's Switch is pretty much exactly what you would expect out of Shadowrun. Any sort of thing that can go wrong does. Simple little tasks for the character become hectic and complicated, and what really underpins the Dead Man's Switch storyline is that it's well written. They took time and effort to really develop this plot. Yeah, it's standard. If you're familiar with Shadowrun and you're familiar with the Universal Brotherhood, as soon as you see them pop up, you know something's going to happen with insects. It's just the way it is. As soon as you start seeing, oh man, those guys are not good. And You kind of also get a feeling that your buddy who's a drunk, yeah, something's not going to go well with him either. But that's okay, that's the point. The point of this whole thing is to take Shadowrun as this sprawling, multi-edition meta plot and to break it down into a nice, neat adventure for new players who might not even be familiar with the pen and paper games, and to really allow them a chance to enjoy themselves, learn a little bit about the plot, mention some other things that are going to come up later on, and to serve as an establishment for Shadowrun Returns as a whole. Shadowrun Returns is on Steam. I'm sure by now you figured that out. If not, my apologies. But what it's really going to take advantage of is the workshop, is the player-driven community. I mentioned modules. There's already some out that are simple, little things where you're like, oh, a Shadowrunner goes to the store. Well, that's like a classic beginner story because Shadowrunners don't go to the store and have good outcomes. Especially not when you choose for them to go to the Redmond Barrens and for, all sorts of chaos to break out. You end up playing hero, it's that sort of thing. But there are also longer, more intricate plots that are going to come out, I'm sure. Some of it will be rehashes of various core books. Some of it will be entirely custom-made, awesome stories. Visually speaking, okay. The first thing I get out of the way is the camera angle is not really convenient to gaming. It's very much like Neverwinter Nights was in that you can't rotate your camera around to really tell where your guys are. Yeah, the game itself is like a pen and paper game. It's like Dungeons and Dragons. It's tactical, which is a good thing. But with the isometrics, it doesn't really make for the greatest visual experience. But it gets the aesthetic down. I'm gonna take this photo. I'm just gonna show you the general how it looks. They pretty much nailed it. And I realize the setting is more second edition setting, even it's 2054 if I'm not mistaken. They get it down. They make things look like cyberpunk, and that's pretty impressive. Even if there's graphical and audio glitches and stuff to deal with. And hey, there's nerfs. You gotta have your nerfs. As far as the editor tools, I played around with them a little bit. The visual stuff again becomes an issue, but that aside, it's not bad. The greatest strength is definitely going to be what the players come up with, what the GMs who run campaigns in real life, sitting around with their friends, at a table, throwing dice. What they came up with, what they're doing is going to be awesome. There's no question about it. Some will be terrible. I've heard of some that are so badly written and downright racist, and that's kind of an issue. But, you know, there are always going to be idiots who take advantage of stuff. That's all there is I can say about that. My bigger gripes, besides the technical difficulties that any new game has, you know, we fix one bug and then try to create three more, my biggest complaints are probably going to be that it doesn't feel like there's that much to invest your experience in. It's called karma in this game. It's an old school Shadowrun thing. I don't feel like there's much to invest in. And the term is face roll. So basically you just run right through the content. I was able to face roll pretty much every combat scene in Dead Man's Switch. My only wipe, which is full death here, came at the hands of a puzzle. It's one of the only puzzles which that's how you get through puzzles in RPG stuff. That's how you figure it out. That's just the way it works. That's fine. But I think they need to do a little bit better job with expanding skills, give knowledge skills instead of just putting knowledge skills as their subcategory of charisma. That doesn't really work. They've done a pretty decent job with firearms. Magic, I feel, is kind of underwhelming. It's awesome, but at the same time, it's like, it doesn't feel like Shadowrun. That's the best way I can describe it. I don't feel like there's a drain mechanic other than if you want to cast a spell more than once in 3 turns, you have to burn hit points. That doesn't make sense. I'm not a tremendous fan of decking. It feels very much like regular combat, and I don't think it should. I think eventually they will get to that, and I have an issue with the cyborg thing, and that not only does it automatically round you down, like if you get a data jack, you're only supposed to lose half a point of your essence. Well, it drops you down a full point unless you put something in immediately. But if you want to get a data jack now and get out Cyber Eyes, let's say, that adds up to 1 point, but if you do one surgery and another, it's a problem. Anyway, well, that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed my first attempt, so don't kill me too hard in the comments. Much love, guys. Stay safe.